The year is 1989. A wall falls in one night. People cry, people laugh, strangers hug each other in the street. The whole world watches on television. But 800 years before that night there was no wall, there was no city. There was only mud, water, and two small fishing villages on a river. Nobody wanted to live there. The soil was bad, the land was wet. There was no gold, no silver, no famous king. This is the story of Berlin. How does a town built on swamp and sand become the center of world history? How does a city get destroyed, cut in half, and still come back stronger than before? To answer that, you have to go back to the beginning. The year is around 1237. Two small villages sit on a river called the Spree. One village is called Berlin, the other is called Köln. They are tiny, just a few hundred people. Fishermen, traders, farmers with muddy boots. The land here is flat and wet. Most kings do not want it. But there is one good thing about this place. Merchants have to cross the river here. There is no other easy way, so traders stop. They rest, they pay a small fee to cross. Slowly, money starts to move through these two small villages. Berlin and Köln are not rich, they are not famous. Nobody outside this region even knows their names, but they sit on a path, and a path can become a road. A road can become a highway of money and power. The two villages grow slowly side by side. They build a wooden bridge to connect them. They start to work together. Nobody in 1237 believes this muddy little place will one day change the world. Then a family took control. The year is 1415. A powerful family arrives from the south. Their name is Hohenzollern. They do not come to visit, they come to rule. The Holy Roman Emperor gives this family control over the region of Brandenburg. Berlin and Köln are part of that land now. The people of Berlin are not happy. They already have their own local council. They already make their own rules. They do not want a new lord telling them what to do, so the people fight back. They refuse to open the city gates. They try to protect their independence. But the Hohenzollern family is strong. They have soldiers, they have money, they have the emperor's support. In the end, the people lose. The Hohenzollern family builds a castle right in the middle of the twin cities. It is a clear message. Berlin now has a ruler, and that ruler is watching. This moment matters more than anyone realizes at the time. The Hohenzollern family will not rule for 10 years. They will not rule for 100 years. They will rule Berlin in one form or another for more than 500 years. Berlin is no longer just a trading post on a river. Berlin is now the seat of power for an entire family, an entire dynasty. The little fishing town has a new job. It must serve as a capital. Then war destroyed everything. The year is 1618. All across Central Europe a terrible war begins. Catholics fight Protestants. Kings fight kings. Armies march back and forth across the same land again and again. This war will later get a simple name, the 30 Years' War. Berlin is small, Berlin is weak. Berlin cannot defend itself. Soldiers come through the city. They take food, they take money, they bring disease, farms are burned, trade stops completely. By the end of the war in 1648, Berlin is a shadow of what it was. Historians believe the war kills close to 50% of the people in the region. Half the population. Gone. Houses stand empty. Streets are quiet. It looks like the story of Berlin might simply end here in ashes and silence. But then one ruler decides to rebuild everything from nothing. His name is Frederick William. People later call him the Great Elector. Frederick William looks at his broken city and makes a bold decision. He needs new people. He needs new skills. He needs new energy. At this time in France, a Protestant group called the Huguenots is being pushed out of their own country. They are skilled workers, craftsmen, thinkers, business owners. Frederick William sends an open invitation. Come to Berlin. Bring your skills. You will be safe here. You will be free to work. Thousands of Huguenots accept the offer. They arrive in Berlin with almost nothing, but they bring knowledge of trade, textiles, and craftsmanship. Within a few decades, a large part of Berlin's population has French roots. New streets are built. New industries open. The city that lost half its people begins to grow again, and this time it grows on purpose with a real plan. Berlin falls down. Berlin gets up again. This will not be the last time. Then a king wanted a crown. The year is 1701. The ruler of Brandenburg is not satisfied being just an elector. He wants a real crown. He wants to be called a king. Through clever politics and a large payment of soldiers to the Holy Roman Emperor, he gets his wish. Brandenburg becomes the Kingdom of Prussia. Berlin becomes a royal capital. A city that started as two muddy fishing villages is now the home of a king. Decades later, a new ruler takes the throne. His name is Frederick, but history remembers him by a bigger title, Frederick the Great. Frederick is not just a soldier. He is also a thinker. He loves music. He loves philosophy. He invites famous writers and scientists to Berlin. Under his rule, Berlin becomes two things at the same time. It becomes a military center with one of the most disciplined armies in all of Europe. And it becomes a cultural center with new palaces, new academies, and new ideas. The Prussian army is not huge in size, but soldier for soldier, it is considered one of the most effective fighting forces in Europe. Other kings study Prussian training methods and try to copy them. Berlin grows wider. New buildings rise near the old castle. Streets are paved. Trade increases. The city that almost disappeared during the 30 Years' War is now a name that other European rulers respect and sometimes fear. Still, Berlin is only the capital of one kingdom. It is not yet the capital of a nation. That will change soon. Then Germany became one. The year is 1871. For centuries, Germany is not one country. It is a patchwork of small kingdoms, dukedoms, and free cities, all speaking German but all separate. One man changes that completely. His name is Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck is the chief minister of Prussia. He is smart, patient, and ruthless. Step by step, through wars and alliances, he pushes the German states to unite under Prussian leadership. In 1871, after a victory over France, the German Empire is officially born. And Berlin, the old fishing town, the old royal capital, is now the capital of a brand new unified nation. The effect is immediate and powerful. Factories rise along the rivers. Railways connect Berlin to every corner of the new empire. Workers pour in from the countryside looking for jobs in the growing industries. The population explodes. Berlin goes from a few 100,000 people to more than 2 million in just a few decades. New neighborhoods appear almost overnight. Electric lights begin to shine on the main streets. Big department stores open their doors. Berlin is no longer catching up to other European capitals. Berlin is becoming one of the most modern, fastest-growing cities on the entire continent. The muddy river crossing from 1237 is now a city of engineers, factory workers, bankers and soldiers, at the very heart of a powerful new empire. But growth this fast never comes without a price. Then the party started, and it couldn't last. The year is 1919. The First World War is over, Germany lost, the old empire is gone. The Kaiser has fled the country, a new government forms. People call it the Weimar Republic, named after the town where its constitution was written. But Berlin, not Weimar, is still the beating heart of the nation. And in Berlin something strange happens. Out of defeat and chaos, a burst of creativity explodes. Artists flood into the city. Filmmakers open new studios. Musicians fill the nightclubs. Writers gather in smoky cafes, arguing about politics and art until sunrise. Berlin becomes one of the most exciting cities on earth. Some people call it the Chicago of Europe. Others simply call it wild. Cabarets stay open all night. Jazz music plays in crowded clubs. Directors make bold new films that shock and thrill audiences around the world. For a moment, it feels like Berlin is dancing on top of the world. But underneath the music, there is danger. The German economy is in serious trouble. The country owes huge amounts of money after the war. To pay its debts, the government prints more and more paper money. The result is a nightmare called hyperinflation. Prices do not just rise, they explode hour by hour. A loaf of bread that costs a few marks in the morning can cost thousands of marks by the afternoon. People carry money in wheelbarrows and shopping baskets, not wallets. Workers demand to be paid twice a day so they can spend their wages before the value disappears completely. Some people burn paper money for heat because it is worth less than the firewood it could buy. Savings accounts built over a lifetime become worthless in weeks. The government eventually creates a new currency and stops the madness, but the damage to people's trust is deep. Millions of ordinary Germans, hard-working people, lose everything through no fault of their own. Then comes another blow. A worldwide economic crash in 1929 sends Germany back into deep poverty. Factories close. Millions lose their jobs. Families struggle just to eat. Berlin's bright lights are still shining in the clubs and theatres. But outside in the streets, anger is growing. People are afraid. People are desperate. And desperate people often look for someone who promises an easy answer. Berlin falls down. Berlin gets up again. But this time, what comes next is darker than anyone expects. Then a man promised to fix it all. The year is 1933. A man named Adolf Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. He promises jobs, he promises pride. He promises to make Germany strong again after years of shame and poverty. To many desperate people, tired of hunger and chaos, his words sound like hope. But behind the promises is something far more dangerous. Hitler and his party, the Nazis, want total control. Within months, other political parties are banned. Newspapers are censored. People who disagree with the government start to disappear or get sent to prison camps. Berlin becomes the command center of this new, brutal system. Under Nazi rule, Jewish citizens, along with many other groups, lose their rights, their homes, their businesses, and eventually their lives. Berlin's own Jewish community, once a proud and important part of the city for centuries, is targeted, attacked, and destroyed. In 1939, Germany invades Poland. The Second World War begins. For the first years of the war, Berlin feels far from the fighting. Life continues, trains run, shops stay open. Many Berliners believe the war will end quickly with Germany victorious. They are wrong. As the war drags on, the bombs start falling on Berlin itself. British and American planes attack by night and by day. Whole neighborhoods are flattened. Families hide in basements and underground shelters, listening to explosions above their heads. By 1945, the war is almost over, but not for Berlin. The Soviet Red Army surrounds the city. Inside, exhausted German soldiers, alongside old men and teenage boys forced into uniform, try to defend streets that are already destroyed. The final battle for Berlin is brutal and short. Soviet tanks push through ruined streets. Buildings collapse under artillery fire. Soldiers fight from room to room, floor to floor. In just weeks, tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians die inside the city. When the fighting finally stops, Berlin is barely recognizable. More than 80% of the historic city center lies in ruins. Church towers stand broken. Famous streets are just piles of brick and broken stone. Hitler is dead by his own hand, hiding in a bunker beneath the wrecked city. The Third Reich, which promised to last 1,000 years, has ended in just 12, and it takes Berlin down with it. Once again, Berlin lies broken. Once again, people wonder if this is truly the end. Berlin falls down. Berlin gets up again. But recovery this time will not come easily, and it will not come as one city. Then the city was cut in half. The year is 1945. The war is over, but Germany is not free to rebuild on its own terms. Four powerful nations, the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, divide the defeated country between them. Germany splits into two parts. West Germany aligns with the United States and Western Europe. East Germany falls under Soviet control. Berlin sits deep inside East German territory, but the city itself is also divided into 4 zones, one for each occupying power. Slowly, the Western zones join together. Slowly, tension rises between the Western powers and the Soviet Union. What starts as a wartime alliance turns into what people later call the Cold War. By 1949, Germany is officially 2 separate countries, and Berlin, still deep inside the East, is also split. West Berlin becomes a small island of Western life, surrounded completely by communist East Germany. For years, people can still move between East and West Berlin fairly easily. East Berliners cross over for work, for family visits, for a taste of Western goods and Western freedom. But this creates a huge problem for the East German government. Skilled workers, doctors, engineers, and young people keep leaving East Berlin for the West. It is a slow but steady drain of talent and hope. The East German government decides it must stop this exodus completely. On the night of August 13, 1961, East German soldiers begin stringing barbed wire straight through the middle of the city. Streets are blocked overnight. Families wake up to find they can no longer visit their own relatives just a few blocks away. Within days, the barbed wire is replaced by concrete. A real wall rises, cutting directly through neighborhoods, over old streets, even through cemeteries and churchyards. The Berlin Wall does not just divide a city. It divides brothers from sisters, parents from children, friends from friends. Guard towers are built along the wall. Soldiers with orders to shoot patrol the border day and night. Over the years that follow, hundreds of people risk everything trying to escape from east to west. Many make it. Many others do not and lose their lives just meters from freedom. For nearly 3 decades, the wall stands as the most visible symbol of a divided world. West Berlin becomes a bright, free but isolated city, connected to West Germany only through narrow air and land corridors. East Berlin becomes the grim capital of a communist state, watched constantly by secret police. 2 cities, one river, one shared history, now living completely separate lives. The wall stands for 28 years. To the people living beside it, in its shadow every single day, 28 years can feel like forever. Berlin falls down. Berlin gets up again. But nobody, not soldiers, not politicians, not even the people of Berlin themselves, can predict how quickly this wall will finally come down. Then in one night it all came down. The year is 1989. Across Eastern Europe change is moving fast. Poland holds free elections. Hungary opens its border with Austria. People in East Germany watch and they start to hope. Every week more and more East Germans take to the streets. They march peacefully in Leipzig than in other cities. They chant for freedom. They chant for the right to travel. The government does not know how to respond. On the evening of November 9, 1989, an East German official makes a mistake during a press conference. A reporter asks when new, relaxed travel rules will take effect. The official is confused. He looks at his papers, then says the rules will start immediately. He means to say soon. But the word he actually uses is immediately. Within the hour, thousands of East Berliners walk straight toward the wall's checkpoints. The guards have received no clear orders. They call their commanders. Nobody tells them what to do. The crowd keeps growing. It grows and grows until the guards feel they have no choice. Finally, one gate opens. People rush through. Strangers from east and west hug each other in the street. Some cry, some laugh. Some simply stand there quiet, shocked that the wall they had lived beside for almost 30 years is suddenly nothing more than an open door. Within days, people climb on top of the wall itself. They bring hammers. They bring chisels. Piece by piece, they start breaking the wall apart with their own hands. The wall that once symbolized fear and division now becomes a symbol of something else completely. A city and a world coming back together. Less than a year later, in October 1990, East and West Germany officially reunite as one country. Berlin, the city that had been split for over 4 decades, is whole again. In 1991, the German government makes a symbolic decision. Berlin, not Bonn, will once again be the capital of a united Germany. The old Parliament building, badly damaged in the war, gets a brand new glass dome. Visitors can walk up inside it and look down at the lawmakers below, a clear symbol of an open, transparent government. In the years since reunification, Berlin transforms again, just as it always has. Old, empty spaces near the former wall become parks, galleries, and apartment buildings. Young artists, students, and entrepreneurs move to Berlin from all over the world, drawn by its history, its low cost of living, and its creative energy. Nightclubs open in former factories. Startups fill old East German office buildings. Today, more than 3,700,000 people call Berlin home, coming from Germany and from countries all around the globe. Berlin falls down. Berlin gets up again. This time, it seems, the city has finally learned how to stay standing. Go back now, all the way back to the year 1237. Picture two tiny villages on a muddy riverbank. A few hundred fishermen and traders, with no idea that their small crossing point will one day matter to the entire world. How does a town built on swamp and sand become the center of world history? It becomes the center of world history because power, ambition, war, and hope all pass through it, again and again, for 800 years. How does a city get destroyed, cut in half, and still come back stronger than before? It comes back because destruction is never the end of Berlin's story. War burns it down. Hyperinflation empties its pockets. Bombs flatten its streets. A wall cuts it in half for nearly 30 years. And every single time it comes back, Berlin falls down. Berlin gets up again. A city is not really its buildings, its castles, or even its walls. Buildings can burn, walls can fall. What remains after every disaster are the people who choose one more time to rebuild. A city is not its buildings. A city is the people who rebuild it.